Hello everyone, welcome back to the Aurelia city in City Skylines. You most probably read the title of this video, and yes, it is true. We are going to start building an airport in Aurelia. Last time we were working on the island, building some more infrastructure and this important tram intersection, but we are going to leave that for a while and move to the other side of the map almost, where I decided to start the airport project. So let's go. The first thing that I had to do was to obviously pick a nice spot for the airport. On this map, that was a major obstacle for any kind of airport project that I might have had. I was even replying to some of your comments saying that this map is really not good for an airport and I'm probably never going to build an airport anyway on it. But I finally decided that we are just going to put the airport in here, in this corner of the map. It's not really right in the corner, but kind of towards the corner. And in this part of the map, I completely flattened the terrain. I just destroyed all the mountains that were around here and just kept it flat for building the airport. Later, I'm going to do some more terraforming, probably on the entire map, because I want to somewhat synchronize the terrain changes that I did in this area with the rest of the map. It would just look weird if I had these flat, huge flat grounds next to the airport and then suddenly tall mountains on the rest of the map. So I'm probably going to, together with the airport project, I'm probably going to just revisit the terrain on the entire map pretty much. Don't really want to do like super extensive changes, but well, definitely around the airport, but further on the rest of the map, just some tiny changes to make it look more natural, I suppose. But that's kind of well into the future, I suppose, because this project is going to take a while. Now that leads me to mentioning that we are definitely not going to finish this airport in today's episode. We are going to focus on one half of the entire terminal building. We are going to completely finish that one half, and later in some next episodes we are just going to work on the rest of the airport and maybe even some surrounding areas, some like highway connections and the terrain as well and all that. Alright, so that was just the first few things that I had to mention, and we can finally talk about the airport itself. So as I was explaining all that, you can see that I already laid down some basic shapes, some basic buildings, basic structures and infrastructure on the terminal buildings. Now, the terminal building, that was the main problem of basically me not wanting to build an airport, because I never really wanted to just use like one terminal building on one style of terminal buildings. I wanted to just create something different, something futuristic, obviously, because Aurelia kind of has a futuristic theme. So I wanted to figure out something that would just look good for that. I finally decided to just download pretty much all buildings related to airports from the workshop and just experiment a lot with different positions, just clipping buildings together, just merging them, and just creating some interesting shapes. So right now we are in like 3 minutes of this video, but this probably was already maybe like 5 hours into the entire project, because I was just experimenting with all kinds of buildings, and this is pretty much just the result. All right, so what is the airport supposed to be? How is it supposed to work? You could have also seen that I built that monorail network. I was kind of inspired by I'm not sure if it's a monorail in real life, but basically that thing they have at the Frankfurt airport. I think it's a monorail, at least from the pictures that I saw on map shots and all that. So that looked kind of nice. So I built that on the terminal buildings. At first, I was thinking that the airport is kind of going to be small, because at first I was thinking I'm just going to build like a really small regional airport, and you know, then this happened. So the terminal building got really huge, and it was just fitting that we would place some sort of monorail, maybe like that, to transport people from the main building to the outlying gates. We are not really going to build the gates themselves, but the buildings where the gates are going to originate from. All right. So we have this orange building, that's the central building for the entire airport, and then we have those white long buildings going from them. And those white buildings, where they are ending, there are kind of like joints where there's that circular building, and from that circular building we have those white terminals again, but going at different angles. So it kind of looks like one of those like folded rulers. I'm not sure if that's the word in English. Basically like those wooden construction rulers. They are also like bendy and stuff. I'm not sure if you understand what I mean, but it kind of reminded me of that, so I wanted to mention it. Anyway, those round buildings, they have roofs. They have kind of like a boring roofs, I suppose. So later I'm going to change that to match the colors, but we are not really there yet. So let's just talk about things that we can already see. So that's the places where people are going to board the planes, obviously, those white terminals. Now this yellow building, that's probably where people are going to first enter the airport using all these roads or the public transport or whatever. And that's where they're going to do the airport things. I should probably mention that I don't really fly much, so I'm not exactly super sure how airports work and all that. So some of these things that I'm building here are just based on like map references, or well, mostly just, this looks cool, so I'm building it, kind of inspiration, right? So that's pretty much the justification for most of these infrastructure thingies that I'm doing here, all right? So just to get that out of the way. Now, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the orange building. The orange building is symmetrical, and it's basically like the two orange buildings with the roofs, orange roofs, and they are connected with some just middle part of it. The middle part, I decided to put that train station building right on top of it. It also has some orange elements on the sides of it, like lines and whatnot. It's a very futuristic looking building, so it definitely fits the overall style. I decided to put it very high above the center of the building, or maybe the middle ground of the building, and the trains from the downtown of the city, you saw that I was building that connection for the trains, is it's just going to be like an express train going right from the downtown, from that main train station all the way to this airport. So it's going to bring people really, really fast, quickly into the airport itself. All right. So I'm mostly thinking that people from Aurelia are going to be using public transport to move to the airport. There's later going to be bus stations and all that. So public transport connections are taken care of. Those buildings with the solar panels at the start of the airport are parking garages. Those are two, again, symmetrical buildings, because the entrance to the airport is kind of symmetrical. We are going to be working today on the first half, but in the next episode we are just going to do the second half. But it's mostly going to be symmetrically placed. So those are parking lots, those are parking garages, probably long-term parking. I assume that those are parking garages for people who just travel to the airport using their own cars. They just park it there and fly, to vacation or whatever. Now, the entrance to the airport, I mean the orange building from this side, it has, well, let's actually start from the entrance to the airport. So there are the highways, and they enter those two roundabouts. Now, I decided to just create two roundabouts. One is above the other. No particular reason other than, it looks cool. And the upper level, I'm thinking that that's going to be the entrance to the orange building. So I built all those kinds of roads where there's probably going to be some like short-term parking for just dropping people off from taxis, buses, or whatever, or your friends are going to drive you to the airport maybe, and then they are just going to leave the airport, right? There's not like long-term parking or anything like that. There's also some, I suppose, intermediate parking maybe on the lower level there. I'm not exactly sure what that's for on airports. I'm thinking maybe it's for people who are picking you up at the airport and maybe your flight got delayed, so they have to wait there or something. I'm not exactly sure what those parking lots are for, but they appear almost everywhere on airports, so I assume that they have a purpose, right? So I built them there. I don't really want to create like a super huge parking lots all around the airport because that's not really going to look good. I'm thinking that the parking garages are continuing underground, so there's a lot of parking spaces. And like I said, I'm assuming that people who live in Aurelia, in the city of Aurelia, are going to go to the airport by public transport, by the trains, mostly the express trains to the airport from the downtown. So they don't need to drive cars to the airport. So the parking garages are mostly for people who are not in Aurelia, because this airport might be like a regional center airport or something like that. So even people from like outlying cities might drive here to just fly somewhere. All right. So that was those were the two levels at the start of the orange building. Now, I started building these office buildings in this center of this one half of the airport. Now, these might be just ordinary office buildings, I suppose, connected to the normal operation of the airport. maybe some offices for the companies that run all the planes and all that. But it also might be some hotels, maybe. I was given a suggestion that those might also be hotels. Maybe like your flight got delayed, or you are transferring to another plane like 8 hours away or something. So maybe there's like hotels right at the airport. So those buildings are there. They are later going to be connected with. Well, actually, I already built that with that white stone path, which is going from the lower level. It's hidden, obviously, underneath the upper level, but on the lower level, there's like an exit from the terminal building, and right, like a straight path right towards these buildings. Oh no, wait, I'm actually building that path right now, just kind of hiding it underneath that upper level. And the reason for just putting that road up there, I think I already showed that in the time lapse, was that I was just putting the buses, like shuttle buses, into this part of the airport. Those are going to be operated, this line is going to be operated by the small bus, the Ollie bus. I'm going to make them go from the orange building towards all these offices. Obviously not like a super long distance, but if you have like a lot of baggage and stuff, then it's probably going to come in handy to have that tiny little bus take you all the way to the terminal. As you can see, I put that glass roof over that path because, when it's raining, then you're not going to get wet when you are walking to the hotels. So that kind of felt like a nice decoration to this place. That's kind of like a common theme for this entire area. Like I explained before, I'm not exactly super sure how airports need to be like. And I can always say that, Aurelia is like a futuristic city, so maybe it's following different rules for airports and stuff. But I'm mostly building this place because I just thought it's looking good. Okay, so if you work at an airport or something and watching this video, then some parts of the airport might seem strange to you, but well, that's just the way it is. All right. Now, we have moved to the upper level, which is, like I said, it's supposed to be some sort of an entrance to this first half of the terminal building. Now, this is going to be the place where we have, like I said, some kind of like a really short-term parking. And this is the place where I decided to put some, again, short-term parking, but for buses, I suppose. And these are the same buses that I use in the entire city, but these are obviously the prop versions. I think I forgot to color them in here, but I decided to treat these buses as if they are electric. So I downloaded this very, very nice prop, which is basically looking like a street lamp, kind of wider street lamp, but it's actually a recharging pole or station. It comes in two versions. It has the version without the collector for the power, and then the version with the collector. I suppose the collector itself is supposed to be part of the bus, but in here it's part of the prop, obviously. So it's kind of convenient to use any kind of bus you want and make it look like it's electric and it's recharging. So that's kind of a nice detail that I put there on the side of this parking lot. So this parking lot is definitely not going to be all that super huge. I decided to even get rid of some of the parking spaces here and just replace them with these entrances to the parking spots, because maybe the buses, if they like want to go to recharge right away when entering this place, they might just drop the people off in here, or maybe the cars that park there obviously might drop off people for the terminal. So they definitely need some convenient and nice ways to just walk the rest of the way, obviously, towards the building. So just walking, in between the cars is not exactly convenient. So that's why those connections are there. Now, since the upper level is obviously not like a surface level, I had to use all these pavement tiles and procedural object pavement to just hide all the holes in the terrain. And later I'm obviously going to use some decorations to break the grayish monotone color of this entire surface, right? Now, this is going to be a very important detail. So what I did there is I used the mod tools to dump the texture for that orange building. And the reason for that is that I extracted the orange color and put it on this procedural object circle. That way I'm going to get exactly the same tone for the orange color, and I'm going to put it on top of these circular buildings on these parts of the airport, right? So I'm going to get exactly the same color, and it's really going to match the buildings together, and I think it's going to look really, really cool. I'm actually going to do that later as well for some different projects, basically going to put these orange circles here and there on the entire airport, so to kind of match even the rest of the buildings towards the terminal, which is really going to turn out looking great. But now for this very important structure, which is obviously the control tower. I decided to put the control tower on this circle building and put it on this half of the airport. The airport itself is not symmetrical in a way that it has more of these white terminal buildings on one side and I think 3, and on this side it has only 2, but this place is probably going to be closer to runways, so I decided to just put the control tower in this one. Now, what exactly was happening over here? So at first I used the Helios power plant, which is a power plant from the workshop. It's like a tower, like a solar tower or something like that. I used the mod tools to dump the texture and model, pretty much just the model, for one sub-building of that structure. So only that kind of like a mesh, literally a mesh, that's just having that very nice shape. And in the center, I put just a pillar, just like a regular pillar, and on top of all this, I decided to put some sort of rounded building with windows on all its sides, because that's going to be the top of the control tower. That's where all the people are sitting and controlling the traffic, right? So as you can see, it's purely procedural objects, and it's just making sure that everything fits and everything looks great. So as with pretty much every single procedural objects project, it's looking really strange at the start, and suddenly it's looking really good, right? So that's exactly the same story with this control tower, and there we go. That's the control tower finished. All right. So that took me a really long time. It was a lot of experimentation again, and you're basically just seeing the results in the time lapse. Now for the entrance to the airport, as you can see, I decided to use these supports. It's kind of a shame that I cannot color them. I was thinking that I'm going to use the same, like a rainbow color, or maybe I'm just going to turn them into the same orange color as the roof of the airport. That would look really great. But unfortunately, there is no procedural objects coloring at this point. There is probably going to be an extension to the Move It, I suppose, to the Move It painter to even repaint procedural objects. But right now we don't have it, and we are just going to have those supports white, which also looks pretty nice. So no problems with that. Later, I put these pedestrian paths towards the airport, because that's, for example, my issue with the Prague airport as well. It has zero potential for pedestrians to just go towards the airport. It's only accessible by cars or buses right now. It's supposed to be connected to a train as well, but that's well into the future. But anyway, there is no connection for pedestrians. So maybe if you live nearby, or I don't know, you just like walking, I guess, then you have zero possibilities to just enter the airport on foot. So that's kind of what I wanted to change in Aurelia, and I built these pedestrian paths. They're kind of going nowhere right now because we are just doing the airport and not really the connections to the airport just yet, but that's obviously going to change. We are going to do some connections, and if you remember, there is actually that's like from episode 1 or 2, 3 maybe, I'm not sure. There is a pedestrian path on the side of the highway bridge crossing the river on that super interchange. So maybe that's actually going to be the same connection, and maybe this path might actually continue all the way to the other side of the city and connect to that pedestrian highway that I was talking about in a couple of episodes when we were doing the suburbs. So theoretically, in the future, you might live in the island city, which is obviously the airport kind of city from the airport building, and you might just walk all the way, or bike all the way, or take a bicycle and go all the way to this airport on one pedestrian path. So if that's going to be true, if I'm going to manage to build that, then that's going to be really cool. This is exactly what I was talking about before, putting these orange circles somewhere else in the airport as well. So those kinds of buildings, well, first I placed those walkways, those walk tunnels, the elevated tunnels. Well, that's not exactly a tunnel anymore, is it? But basically those connections, I'm thinking that those are the connections from the parking lot. So you're gonna leave your car there, gonna enter some elevator, I suppose, and it's going to take you up to those walkways. And the elevator buildings, I just took, I think it's a residential building, I'm not sure, but it has like a nice rounded top. So I just took the building, it's like a huge skyscraper, so I had to sink it underground mostly and leave only that rounded top, just cutting through the roof of the parking lot, and put that orange thing on the top, because otherwise there was the helipad on it, and that was obviously looking quite strange. Later I'm going to also put those same buildings with the same orange caps even in here, just to detail this place and kind of fill it with something, right? I was also putting those walkways, those elevated walkways, connecting some of the hotel buildings or the offices, just to maybe make it so that you can just enter one building and then walk around the entire complex of buildings without leaving the actual building. So, you know, that's kind of convenient. Lots of detailing when it comes to like traffic lights and arrows and all those kinds of like stop signs and no entry signs. I'm not really showing it all in the time lapse because it was a lot of things and a lot of experimentation as well. You can see, you could have noticed that there's also a road that goes, you don't necessarily need to just loop around towards the orange building, but there's also a road going down towards the white long terminal buildings. I decided to put a no entry sign on the road there and place those red and white barriers in there, those like raising barriers, because I'm assuming that that's probably some kind of entrance for like maintenance or workers and regular customers or just airport passengers are not really going to go there, not going to be allowed to go there. It's just for, like I said, maintenance or something like that. All right. So detailing this upper place as well. I used the colored parking spaces in there because I really thought it's going to look nice, and maybe the different colors for the parking spaces mean like different regimes maybe for the parking space, maybe different prices for the parking, something like that. And well, but mostly it's just looking nice, right? Like I said, that's going to be the justification that I'm going to be using all the time when building this project. One other detail that I'm kind of proud of is this roof, which is just suspended on those cables going from the orange building. It doesn't have any supports that would just block the spaces in front of it. And obviously, this building doesn't have any doors, so I had to put those procedural object doors, making them larger to pretty much fit the sizes of the crosswalks and all that. And suddenly this place doesn't look all that empty anymore, with all the cars and all the buses and crosswalks and all these kinds of details and these planters. And obviously these planters are later going to be just populated with all kinds of flowers and just decorations and things like that. I think I completely skipped putting lamps into this area. I don't think I did any night shots of this place. It doesn't really look good during the night, I assume, because I was not really putting lamps absolutely everywhere. But I suppose that some kind of night shots are probably going to happen in this project. This is a thing that is very, very important. I was already preparing to put lots of trees around the airport, or pretty much inside the airport complex. So as you could have seen, I already surrounded the office complex with like curved roads. So that was supposed to be a border between different kinds of trees, different detailing, right? So as you can see inside, I'm putting these strange colored trees, those yellow and purple trees, and on the edges of it, I'm just creating that border with the green trees. It looks really nice. I think it looks really nice. It's obviously some lower trees, some super huge trees, probably not be all that nice right next to the airport. I built a tiny little parking space for those Oli buses, and in here, that's right on the edges of the parking, on the office area. I'm building this bus stop for maybe some long-range buses that don't exactly go to the airport itself, but maybe for these offices. But anyway, guys, we are going to continue with this project in the next episode. I'm gonna build the second half of the terminal and maybe something more. We will see. So guys, I hope you are going to like the airport project. I hope you already liked the first episode of it. If you did, then you can consider putting a thumbs up underneath the video, share the video with your friends, and you can always subscribe to the channel if you are new here. You can also check out some of the links in the video description, and if you want to directly support this channel, you can become a channel member by clicking the join button below. Thank you again for watching, take care, enjoy the cinematics, and goodbye.